is Vida Crocetta, and Paul Bennett and I are here in Burlington to have a meeting tonight at the University of Vermont talking about the future of decriminalizing marijuana. And as we were talking earlier, Paul, about that Joe gave us the good idea that is to confirm the notion that Marijuana Resolve is not a decrim group. We deal with all issues, but in Burlington now we are dealing with decrim because that's part of Senator Shumlin's political campaign. So you agree with that strategy, that we should do that?
You're right. I think it's a very good idea not to use too many adjectives in front of what we're trying to do, other than talk about the state of marijuana use and the benefits of regulating marijuana, both economically and socially. And it's a shame that we're locking up so many people for no real good reason. Nonviolent marijuana users are spending time in prison being fined, and it's affecting their ability to get financial aid for schooling. It's affecting their ability to get employment and housing.
It's a beautiful sunny day to come visit Mayor Kiss, don't you think so? We're about ready to go up and sit down with him and have a brief conversation about marijuana, and Marijuana Resolve is here today to get his opinion. Mm-hmm. I think we should go up and sit down with the mayor and talk to him for a couple minutes.
I'm ready.
So let's do that. Okay. Well, you guys are higher than the rest of us.
Let me introduce everybody here. Mayor Kiss, one of my buddies, seatmate. Nice to see you too, Mayor.
I'm Vida Crocetta. Nice
Vida
to see
Crocetta,
you.
he'll be doing the interview.
Paul Bennett.
Paul Bennett, he's with.
Joe is with us here.
Who are you with again? You're
in New York, you mean?
Yeah. What's your? Yeah. What's
He works for a foundation in New York City.
And then.
And Joe, our main guy, our cameraman. So thank you for having us here, Mayor.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Joe. Nice to meet you. I'm standing here in Burlington, Vermont. We took a little trip up here to Burlington, me and Joe and a few of my other friends, Paul and Vida from Marijuana Resolve, Inc. And we're standing here with the mayor, and the mayor has something to say for the folks in Brattleboro.
Watch the Pulse of Brattleboro on BC TV.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kiss, for having members of Marijuana Resolve coming here to talk with you today. We really wanted to just spend a few minutes with you and try to discuss, but to get your idea of how you feel about marijuana. And one way to really start this off would be to ask you about the current, I guess you would call it a movement. They're doing a petition drive in this city to get it on the ballot to legalize marijuana where it's regulated and licensed, and I assume for an adult market. How do you feel about that in your city here in beautiful Burlington?
Well, if it could be done, if there's a practical way to do that, it's something that I want to explore. I mean, it's one thing to say, let's do that, another thing to do it. And I'm not sure where the models are that have been successful models, but in the context of alcohol, marijuana, I think is no more of an issue, or in some respects less of an issue, but it's something that could be considered, I think, in that same vein. So I'd be certainly willing to have conversations about that issue, and just not sure how to get there.
Well, I think they may, what would probably happen, I think that's part of their plan, is to once they get enough signatures to get it on the ballot, then you have the voting populace do it. Now, if the people turn it down, it becomes a moot point. Then nobody's acting on it. But what might happen is that there'll be a high percentage of people who may vote for it, but not enough to make it law. So under those conditions, what might happen is a repeat, where they may do it again or something like that. Would you be willing to talk about legalization of marijuana in Burlington if you knew that a large number of the people voted for it but wasn't a majority?
Well, remember, Burlington's not going to do anything by itself. I mean, it's very,
That's right.
Vermont has to,
That's right.
has to develop the statute and approve it, and
Right.
at best it might be a charter change that the people of Burlington would support. So, there's always got to be this bigger picture that whatever we'd be recommending in Burlington's likely would have to be recommended for the state of Vermont. So it's a bigger discussion. So I wouldn't necessarily subject Burlington voters to vote after vote, because
I see.
I think you really have to have that discussion in Montpelier. But advisory votes from communities have always been helpful in setting the stage for a debate in Montpelier that's effective. So having a vote in Burlington saying, well, what do people think about this? So it's very clear to me that we shouldn't be putting people in jail for using small amounts of marijuana or having small amounts of marijuana. That isn't, I don't think, a productive public policy. But I'm not sure that we've actually formulated a way to get from here to there yet.
This is what I guess they're working on. Marijuana Resolve tonight is having an event, a community meeting really, at the University of Vermont. And that issue is about decriminalization. Now that that issue doesn't go as far as what we started out talking about, which is legalization.
Right.
However, it is a good interim step, because part of the issue behind decriminalization is to keep particularly young people from getting a criminal record that affects their ability to go back to school, to get jobs, maybe housing. And so, how do you feel about? If you, what you're saying about decrim suggests about legalization suggests that obviously decrim, which is kind of a softer approach, is something that you probably would be, somewhat behind, or at least understand it. Is that true? I mean, do you
Yes.
feel specific?
Definitely. I mean, we could look to civil fines, but we wouldn't make the presence of small amounts of marijuana something that would be a felony or a misdemeanor. It would be something that would be addressed by a civil fine at most. And clearly, what we have, in this country is sort of an epidemic of incarceration. We don't want to have the use of small amounts of marijuana or the presence lead to something that ends up with a criminal record. I don't think it warrants that at all.
That to me, excuse me, is one of the serious issues here, is the criminal record.
Sure.
The fine, no one's really that happy about, but it's the criminal record that we really need to address here. I just want to say that belatedly, I'm Vita Crocetta, and this is Paul Bennett, and we are members of Marijuana Resolve, along with Daryl Pillsbury and Joe Bushy and other people who are working with us. We consider ourselves a state organization, and we will be going into probably Montpelier, maybe St. Johnsbury, and some other areas. And we're dealing with decriminalization because that's what we're going to face in the legislature in January. We are interested in legalization also, and we will deal with that, but our focus is really decrim at this point. And so our activities here today in Burlington, from Marijuana Resolve's standpoint, is decriminalization. And I do know that people will be coming tonight who will want to talk about legalization, and Senator Shumlin, as you know, has as a part of his campaign, has come out in favor of decriminalization. Do you see that as a good step for the senator, as terms of maybe his ability to draw votes, perhaps, or turn people off?
Well, in some respects, you look at that as potentially a courageous position to say, there's been so much damage done to people as a result of marijuana and being in small amounts of marijuana. In the 60s, in some states, people had long prison sentences for being stopped with marijuana. So to the extent that that's a courageous position to say, we're going to try to find a solution so that this isn't criminalized, I think that's good, if only for moving the discussion forward.
Yes, exactly. And I think we hope that he'll have some very good things to say about that, because we think we know we have people that will come. We don't know how many. The Ira Allen Lecture Hall is a good-sized little lecture hall, and we've got it set up so that we have Daryl and Paul Bennett and Jason Lorber speaking, and the senator follows that, and then the rest of it is opening it up to the audience, so we have audience participation. And so we're thinking that really along the lines that you were just suggesting a little while ago, we need to get this in a dialogue and get it out in front of the people and have people be able to respond to it. And my impression here in Burlington, not unlike Brattleboro, is that there's a fair amount of high support. Now, I'm only doing this anecdotally, there's no, but my feeling is that this feels like a good time for all of us to talk to this. And to be able to sit down with the mayor of Burlington, I think is a very unique opportunity and experience, and we're really grateful that you can talk about this. Is there anything that you would say to the people of Burlington that you would, other than about this issue that you would would you encourage? So you would say you would encourage them to pursue this dialogue? Is that accurate portrayal?
Sure, and I think I think what we want to do is take away falsehoods or fears and try to get down to what's the practical effect of marijuana in our community, and what can we support about it, what should we contain about it. I was in the House when we passed medical marijuana in Vermont. I think that proposal didn't pass immediately. It took discussion, and it took a while for legislators to see that there was a benefit in medical marijuana, that it wasn't, at least in Vermont, just another vehicle for trying to have someone be able to sell marijuana, that it had a direct effect to people who had health needs where there was a benefit. So I think trying to clear away the fears, so we get down to what's the practical relationship with marijuana to our lives, and what's our best way to address that. I think that's a good discussion to have.
Well, the way you just jump in a second, the way you just phrased that brings to mind, I don't know if you want to touch on this is a suggestion that Joe actually had the other day in terms of how we talk about marijuana. And when we use labels like decriminalization, legalization, sometimes it can have the effect of turning off one group or another. But if we talk about, like you just presented it, what is the future of marijuana in the state in terms of its benefits and its uses, et cetera, I think that's more that can further the dialogue and the evolution of thinking about it.
I think that's a good point. And also, when you do get down to specifics, we do actually come to, like for instance, a really solid model. I assume you're familiar with the alcohol model? Okay, well, I can tell you, well, let me just, it's pretty quick. Marijuana sold along the same lines we do alcohol. I've talked to people throughout the state, and I challenge anyone in Vermont to walk into a liquor store and watch a person who has a liquor license sell to a minor. They're not going to do it, and the reason why they won't do that is because they're not going to lose a lucrative adult market and be stupid enough to sell it to kids. So what the alcohol model does is it provides a licensing and regulatory control over this very popular, it's a drug, and then it has the correlating effect of collateral effect of not you cannot sell it to kids, because these people with a liquor license, just like, and the people with a marijuana license, will not sell it to children. It is, from our view, from all that we've seen, it's the single best way to keep it out of hands of young people. It goes through a farming, production, manufacturing, packaging, just like alcohol does. It ends up on a shelf that's licensed by someone that's scrutinized by, let's say, the Vermont State Substance Authority, for an example. What's your feeling about that? I know I'm throwing this out to you cold like that, but what's your feeling of it? Let's just, for argument's sake, say if marijuana became legalized, would a model like that make sense to you, where it would be sold to an adult market by licensing, where you protect the children from getting it, and it goes through the same type of channels as alcohol does?
I think the theory applies, because we've got a model with alcohol, and of course alcohol is addicting and it's dangerous if you abuse it, and so I think the model would say that marijuana would be protected in the same way, that you have licensed authorities and consequences if you didn't follow the law. But so I think that is one way that people would say this is how we could legalize marijuana, and they would have followed that approach. It hadn't been, I don't know if it's been done anywhere.
No, in fact, to my knowledge, I don't think we've ever had that type of. We've talked about a lot, but it's never been done.
Yeah.
And so, but part of this issue about taking it to the people and helping them to become aware, and then from that awareness have a choice, are things like that. We would really need to talk about that. And the alcohol model gives people a very solid way of dealing with this. It also tends to reduce the fear we found of people. As soon as you can convince people that you're protecting their children, that goes a long way to helping them to understand that if it's not going to get into the hands of my kids that readily, and by the way, we all know, it doesn't matter what you do, alcohol gets to kids now. Tobacco gets into the hands of kids, but they have to go through a strenuous licensing and regulatory process in order to do that. And they can't buy it over the counter the way an adult does. So it really starts to cut down on how this can affect kids, and hopefully. And one of the reasons why I bring that up is because the United States has the highest incarceration rate of its young people than any other country in the world. That's sad. Sometimes I don't want to see, anybody go to jail unnecessarily, but when you have a high rate of our young that's being incarcerated out of proportion to not only the other people in this country, but in the world, that says a lot to me. And so we would look for ways to keep reducing that. I think that's a very, and by the way, as you know, you have universities here. This is a big youth town in Burlington.
And like I say, I mean, I think that prosecution on Burlington's part, I think is already a low priority.
Mm-hmm.
Probably unless it's associated with other behavior that then
That's right.
links it up. So I mean, we're
That's
already,
great.
I think as a society here,
Yes, I think I remember.
working to minimize that.
Good.
But so there's a gap, there's a difference between prosecutorial discretion and actually having laws that change.
What kind of discretion?
Prosecutorial discretion.
Yes, right.
So right now, the laws are in the books that, and the police exercise discretion in terms of acting in the law. If you change the law so that something is not illegal, that's a different step. But,
It affects it right down the line then.
Sure.
The arrest, what police officers would do, what prosecute. In fact, under certain conditions, they wouldn't be involved. In fact, the odd thing about the alcohol model is that your police drop back, your prosecution drops back, your court load drops back, your prison reduces. It's an amazing thing to look at, and so we're glad to be here in Burlington, and it's definitely a wonderful city. Look, it's beautiful. Today we have a wonderful day. No rain we have the past 2 days, but the view of Lake Champlain from the shanty on the shore is a beautiful, even in the rain. And the storm last night came in and just really covered that restaurant. It was really awesome to see that. So, well, Paul, do you have anything you'd like to ask?
The other thing we didn't touch on, we don't have very much time, I know you're pretty busy, but under a regulated system, there are certain economic advantages to the city and to the state in terms of opening up other possibilities, perhaps for the hemp industry. I mean, it's a whole industry that can be revived in terms of that kind of farming and production, and the resources that are spent on interdiction and prison, it can be diverted to other social needs, schools and other social services. So there's a benefit there.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And of course, hemp has been something that's been promoted in Montpelier regularly as an agricultural product that Vermont could grow and use.
Yeah.
That's not, that hemp isn't associated with the marijuana that people would smoke.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, but hemp is linked with fears, and so it doesn't get promoted as an agricultural product that would be helpful. So
Yeah.
that's why it's helpful to have discussions about all these issues, to try to separate things that would benefit us from things that we really need to grapple with.
Exactly.
But the fear of being able to have that conversation isn't warranted. I think we have to have the discussion and see if we can move things forward.
Exactly.
Well, then I guess the next step is, once we get over all of that, is how do we take on the feds?
Yeah, well,
Which is really waiting there. No matter what any state does, the old feds are just sitting there waiting for us, and they're not on anybody's side. Mayor Kiss, thank you very much for taking a few minutes with us. We really do appreciate that, having us in your office like this. So, thank you, Mayor Kiss.
thanks for being here. Thanks, Mark.
Well, there we go.
Did I say anything good?
This is a beautiful building, I have to say. You know, someone has an absolutely wonderful. Well, that was a pretty good meeting with the mayor. He sounds like a very sensible fellow.
Absolutely.
And as you pointed out at our conversation with him, that Mayor Kiss has courage to come out and speak about this as openly as he did.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear associated with speaking about marijuana in general, whether for or against, but I think it takes more people to come out of the woodwork and express an opinion, and it'll help move the conversation along.
Well, I think the mayor definitely facilitated that today.
Absolutely.
He has some very good ideas. He has strong points. He can say them courageously. And that's the kind of leadership that cities need,
Exactly.
as well as our state level and you know, well, we'll stay away from the federal level for now because we know how the feds are on this. But in the states, you know, it's at the state level that we're working on this, and being able to talk with someone on Mayor Kiss's level, I think really enhances the public's view. You know, it gives them a sense of this is what's being talked about, and this is some of our choices, and I think the mayor contributed to that very nicely. What do you think?
I do too.
Well, then let's go on and continue to do our thing at the University of Vermont.
Yeah.
This is Tuesday, August 10th, at around 4 p.m. tonight at the University of Vermont. We will discuss the future of marijuana in Vermont, and Marijuana Resolve is the sponsor of that discussion.
Great.